Welcome to 3P&R. I'm your host, Adam R. And tonight's episode, I have Dawn and Lainey with Spectrowave. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Thanks for being on. I appreciate your time.
Sure.
Thanks for having us.
So let's talk about openness with what got you into it.
Okay. Well, is that Lainey and I met in 2006, and we'd always we met around Halloween. So
makes sense.
Ironically, right? Is that so that lent conversations from experiences that we both had. Lainey had experiences when she was younger in a particular house in Chicago, and I had some experiences not as profound as what she experienced, but experiences nonetheless. And we both liked Halloween. I mean, we really like Halloween.
Yeah, you have to love that holiday. It's one of my favorites.
Is that so? So at the time, around 2006, 2007 is when Ghost Hunters had first come on cable, and then it was quickly followed by Ghost Adventures. And so we would watch these episodes, and I had talked to her about it, and I said, I go, wouldn't that be interesting to go and do that? And then I read someplace online, a blog that actually said that these guys faked evidence. So after we discussed it, and I go, this really intrigues me. You know, we should go out and try to purchase at least a couple pieces of equipment that they have that they're using, and let's go to a purported haunted location, and let's see if we capture anything, and not fake any evidence. We have no reason to really do anything or to fake anything. So we went there, and we went to this place that was, we had since didn't have any video cameras at the time, but we had gone to this place that was Capone's warehouse. We had since revisited that particular thing, but we had gone there and we captured an EVP on a spirit box. So I can only tell you how
the moment of excitement
that made us, right? And I mean, and the rest is kind of history. Is that then we got more and more in tune to the paranormal community, and met a whole host of different people through the course of doing initial tours where it was a group of people, right? And you really didn't get much evidence during that because there was too many people, too much contamination. You were never sure if somebody moved a chair,
right? And
that's what you heard on the recording. And so I have an AV background, and Lainey's also got an IT background. So we effectively put that all together and started to make contacts through the industry, basically, and find locations that we could investigate privately and not with a whole group of people. So, and the rest is kind of history. But Lainey's got an interesting story to share with you about what happened through the progression of this. Since we started back in about 2013, I think we started doing this. And then something happened in 2014.
2014, I became very sensitive, saying that what happened was I was diagnosed with a really rare form of leukemia, which was pretty much a death sentence. ICU, I was in there for about 6 months, and they were given as much blood. It was just pouring out of my system. It was horrible. So basically what happened was I had to start planning the funeral, my last rites. So saying this is I hit the death plane. Basically before leukemia, I would pick a spot. Okay, maybe something would happen, something would not happen. Now it's like every time I pick a spot, sure enough, we have multiple devices that go off and confirm that this spot right here is haunted. And I think being so close to death with being in the ICU has made me more sensitive.
It makes sense. I say this a lot. The brain's powerful. It's really powerful.
It is.
Yes. And everything I've been investigating so far, whether it be paranormal, UFO, or otherwise, I find a lot of parallels with certain individuals who are, I call them selected. Because me, I'm unfortunate. I've seen nothing. and it sucks.
You and me both. Is that, and I have to say is that because prior to this, the few investigations that we did prior to her getting sick, we would look at each other and I'd be like, I don't know, where do you want to go now? And one of the things that we do when we investigate, unlike you see on a lot of the shows, that they'll go back and they'll research the property and they'll come up with people's names and they'll interview the owners, and the owners will tell people that, their names. And we don't like to do that. We actually like to go into an investigation cold. I mean, we try not to look up any information about the property outside of the fact that it's purported to be haunted. And maybe the owner, we actually ask them not to tell us where people have captured things in the home. They may say, well, there's been reports of little children or adults or what have you, right?
Right.
But we try not to get too involved in the information stream. So when we do investigate, we're kind of like have an open mind to things, and we're not looking or creating things to happen.
Right. You're not having anything suggestive happen.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's smart, because a lot of people, when you go out, when you go out in the woods and you're looking for, let's say you're hunting and you're looking for moose, everything looks like a moose. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's just how it is, because your brain is focused on that particular. So yeah, you're not having anything suggestive go on. So that sounds like a better way to do it.
And it's worked out really well for us, because then usually halfway through the night, what happens most of the time, sometimes the folks that control or own the properties themselves, they'll leave and we won't see them, and we'll correspond with them later. But sometimes they're on location, or they'll leave and they'll go home and they'll come back like 4 hours into it just to check in with us to make sure everything's okay. And at that point is when we usually start sharing information about what we've caught so far. And then we listen to the stories themselves. An interesting one was the Fowler Theater. And this really, we have since gotten to know Dwight pretty well. And Dwight kind of handles the Fowler Theater for the Landmark Preservation Committee. And we had done that same kind of circumstance. We didn't really read anything about it. It was early on when he opened it up to paranormal investigators. And so we were like, I don't know, the second group that actually went there. So there wasn't a lot of history there of anybody catching anything. And then we touched base with them. And one of the interesting things that happened was about halfway through the investigation, Lainey kept capturing things behind the screen. So I'll let her talk about it.
And I went ahead and I asked Dwight, I said, listen, I have this feeling. Did someone hang themselves on stage behind the curtains? It's just some kind of like really sad, depressed feel that I get, and something about being hung. And the look on his face, he had goosebumps, and he's like, you know what? We do not tell anybody that. And someone did hang themselves behind the stage.
Whoa.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that would creep me out a little bit.
Right. And it was the coolest thing to have confirmation that something I was feeling actually was confirmed. And now I try to tap in so much to what I'm feeling and just like talk about it. And sure enough, pretty much all the time, I'm pretty correct.
Oh yeah. And so, talk about having to listen to your significant other. So every investigation we do, I just listen to Lainey. Lainey points and I go.
Yeah, Don, I guess like me, like you want to, right? It sucks. Like I swear, there's select people. You know what I mean? I was a weird kid. Like if I heard like most things that scared other kids, I ran to see it. I had to. And eventually I'm going to get out and do a documentary. And I say this on every episode. I'm going to be the guy who eventually does see something, runs out of the camera, and doesn't come back.
Is that, yeah, well, I've been, is that early on, Lainey used to get touched a lot. Is that, and rightfully so, if you've ever seen a picture of Lainey, if I was a ghost, I'd touch her.
Yeah, I saw some of the videos. I subscribed, yeah.
So, but Lainey used to get touched all the time, and then recently I started getting touched. Is that I've had people wisp the back of my hair, and you would think that that's unnerving. And one of the things that we tell people, they ask us all the time, are you guys scared to be in these situations? Are you, does it really scare you to do this? And I said, I tell them no. And I mean, Lainey feels that same way too, right?
Not at all.
Is because we have so much equipment and we try to utilize the equipment to actually make sure that what we're sensing or experiencing is if it's corroborated by the equipment.
Right.
And so you're so in the mindset of looking at that I would guarantee you, there's been a couple of occasions that had I been in that location, in that area by myself without any equipment, I would have freaked out.
Yeah, I can imagine. So before I'm sure you guys have one of your more frightening experiences, save that, because I'm going to have you guys on again. There's something I'll discuss off air afterward.
Okay.
Because I have something brewing. Your backgrounds. I mean, obviously you don't do it for a living, right? You guys have jobs.
No. Yeah, we have jobs.
Right. And so what kind of effect does it play in your career?
You know what I'm going to say is that I've been at my job now almost 19 years, at the same job, and everybody knows I do it.
Right.
And so they're all accepting about it.
So you ever get that guy at work like, hey man, listen, don't tell anyone else.
Yeah, there's this creepy guy who investigate ghosts,
Yeah, you get that guy that pulls you aside at break. He's like, look, I really got to tell you about this. It weirded me out. And because he comfortably knows you're the only person he could walk to with it, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm really surprised. I think had it been maybe 40 years ago, people wouldn't, they would have been like, I would have been ostracized, as the total weirdo, and they would have put me in a basement with a stapler.
I've had people ask, like, why are you doing this? Like, this podcast is more than just UFOs, ghosts, and I have health and wellness on it. I have a detective on, a homicide detective talking about, homicides and serial killers, and eventually I'm going to have other police and law enforcement on here talking about cold cases, right? Give new light to it. So there's diversity here, but my main focus is this is a childhood fantasy of mine, right? And in my teens, I lost it because, when you're in your teens and your 20s, you're out doing whatever. And then COVID strikes, you got nothing to do. And then you're watching documentaries and you're like, holy shit, I really want to learn more about this, right? and as you watch it, you're stuck. Like, for me, again, as a kid, I've literally never witnessed anything, and there's some incidences in my life where friends said they saw something. I'd run and go look at it, nothing there. But ultimately, watching these shows, so the one you highlighted earlier, the Ghost Adventurers, why are they always there in the dark? I'm pretty sure ghosts don't have a schedule,
is
right?
That and there's actually an explanation for that. Is that when you use IR cameras, and is that IR picks up a higher wavelength than what your eyes can see. And, do ghosts haunt during the day? Of course they do.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, spirits, you can have interaction at any point in time, right?
It's true, because if I ever have a ghost bother me, it's not going to, it's going to end up being the one that's there 24/7. It's bored, and it's just going to, it's going to harass me all day, all night. So.
Right. Absolutely. So, there is a quantifiable reason for actually using that video at night when you have all the lights off. And the other thing too is that if you're trying to detect shadows, right, IR is perfect for that. If you have lights on, you don't know who's creating the shadow.
Yeah, that's true.
You could get some kind of a bounce from a mirror, and ultimately it's you think you're seeing something, but when you're in pitch darkness and all you see is that little screen on your camera, and that's the only way that you can see, your eyes of course adjust a little bit to it, but and that's the biggest reason is that, and people always ask, why do you investigate at night? Is it just because of the creep factor, because you're a creepy guy and you like to only come out at night? You're like a vampire. The reason is because when you investigate things at, like, let's say starting at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, right? Most people, that their day has wrapped already. Right. And they've gone to bed or they're at home. And so you don't have, for the most part anyways, you usually will have a less likelihood of something happening that might be caused by another individual.
Right. So you're mitigating ambient sound.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely.
And, I'm on board with what you're telling me, because if you look at some of these, even the UFO reports, the night vision and infrared cameras seem to be the thing that are hitting the most home runs with finding these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things you can't possibly see with the naked eye. And I have to think, and again, there's no science in anything I'm telling you guys. This is all imagination. Like every theory I have in the aliens, if you listen to another episode and you hear my theory on aliens, this is all from imagination and my form of logic and etc. Mm-hmm. I have to imagine that ghosts and other apparitions are manipulating energy. And,
of course they are.
Right.
Sure.
So and that's, that explains for me why you feel the sensations of being touched and so on. And
cold spots, it drains the room of, right. I mean, because ultimately we're all electromagnetic creatures, right? I mean, we're our own batteries, basically.
Right. Yeah. Our brain's basically a computer.
That's it.
So yeah, I'm on board. And I got to tell you, like, I know what you said earlier, because Lainey's clearly the braver one. I saw some of the videos. She just walks right in there, no care.
She does, and she does, and she's done it to me. During the investigation, sometimes she gets affected. With whatever energy, if it's negative energy, and sometimes she wants to be away from me. And so a lot of the times I'll see her grab her stuff and I'll be doing something or putting batteries in or what have you. And she's gone. She's like, I'm going to the basement, and she'll go and be in the basement by herself, for like an hour.
My goodness, Lainey.
It's like this little high you get when you're doing it and trying to, whatever kind of answers you can get from whatever is haunting the location, whether this be a parallel universe, different dimension, is it a ghost? Why do they keep haunting? Why is some ghosts more violent? There's a lot of violent ghosts. Why are some so peaceful? Where does our energy go once we pass away?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions we all do have.
I had Steve Murr on recently. I don't know if you heard that episode. And he's a paranormal specialist, parapsychologist, etc. And there's many, according to what I read and what he said in other conversations, there's some of them just don't have, like, they don't know what they're doing, right? There's an example. I just spoke with Roberta Grimes, and she works in Afterlife, and it was said that, let's say one dies in a car accident, it's instant. So they're like I guess what would be the greeters to bring it to the other side or whatever it may be, they missed that opportunity. There was no preparation for that. It was instant. Right. For me, I'm nostalgic, right? If I do stick around, it's because I don't want to let go of what's here. Exactly. That's the truth.
And for the most part, I mean, and this goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of reports, thousands of years of reports of ghosts. This has been in every culture, since recorded history, that ghosts and spirits and entities, have been around. I mean, so there's always been something to it. And I have to tell you, I mean, some of the experiences that we've had really reinforce it. It's no longer a situation where we're trying to debunk, because people were putting false evidence up on TV. I mean, right. TV is TV.
Well,
right?
They had to sensationalize and make it interesting. I mean,
sure,
I kind of get it, I guess. It's a disappointment to me.
But I will say is that every location that's been purported to be haunted, some more so than others, is we've been successful in capturing things that we did not create. And we've come to find out through the course of time, and maybe your listeners would appreciate this, right? But there are a couple of things that you can interfere with that will give you false positives, and that we see on TV shows now because we own the equipment and we use it all the time and we understand how it works.
Right.
For example, walkie-talkies are a big no-no. You should not be using, if you're using walkie-talkies, you should not be using REM pods. Is that they set REM pods off. Huh. So if you're, filming a TV show, right, and you want to get a positive reaction from a REM pod, right? And a REM pod, for everybody who's listening, is really that red and black device that you see on Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. It's got the silver antenna on it, and it generates an electromagnetic field. And once that field is interrupted or broken, the theory is that the REM pod would go off, the alarm and the lights would go off, meaning that there's a spirit or an electromagnetic field that has interfered with that pulsating field that that device generates.
Right.
So,
what about a Bluetooth though? What about the effects of a Bluetooth?
Well, and here's the thing: Bluetooth doesn't really seem to affect any of the equipment that we have. But one thing that we do all the time is that we go on
where are you going
airplane mode.
Oh, yes, airplane mode.
Right.
Yeah.
So we go on airplane mode all the time, and we make sure that all of our Bluetooth interactions are off, just in case. We've never had an inference where it's happened. But here's an interesting thing: is that if you go to our videos on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel, Spectrewaves. And if you take a look at, we were at the McPike Mansion, and we were just setting up at the McPike Mansion. So it wasn't even dark out.
By the way, where is, I saw that one. Where is that?
A McPike Mansion is in Alton, Illinois.
That's creepy.
It's one of the top 25 most haunted buildings in America.
Listen, that place is creepy broad daylight.
Yes, it is. And so when we were on the porch, Lainey had laid down her Samsung S7. It was the S8.
I think it was the S8.
Yeah, is that and so she laid it down on the chair, on the wicker chair that's on the porch, and we were getting things rolling. And if you watch the beginning of the video, Lainey had put down a REM pod. We don't use walkie-talkies, so it started to go off. Sometimes it goes off where the battery's getting low. And sometimes it freaks out, right? So we always try to change with fresh batteries. Sometimes we think we put fresh batteries in and it's still making weird things happen. So, but we try to debunk what we can. Right. Lainey puts her phone down. Her phone starts taking pictures by itself. Then it flips over to video and it takes a video and then it flips back to taking another picture by itself. Now, all of us own cell phones. All of us know how cell phones work. If you're going to do a selfie or you're going to do a regular picture, right, you have to initiate that to have that happen.
Right.
You have to go to the camera icon. You have to press the button for it to take a picture. You have to go to the video. You have to engage the recording. None of which happens, and you see it happen live on camera. Jeez. Is that so? And I mean, we've had a lot of experiences, and just to touch base with everybody who's listening is that we have no explanation for that camera doing that. We couldn't recreate that if we tried, nor could any of your listeners. And if they do, I would welcome them to actually write me in theory what they think happened.
The only real thing. So when someone asks me how I approach this, I don't approach as a skeptic. I approach with an open. I'm open to whatever. Because I truly believe that we cannot explain anything, not everything. It's not possible. Everything we know is fact now. I promise is proven, not fact later. That's just how that's the science of it all. And the only thing that comes to mind with the phone doing that is a very strong magnet sitting on top of it. That's about the only thing that's going to do that. A really big magnet, like a speaker magnet. But outside of that, if it's doing it by itself with no magnet on it, it's just not happening. So
right.
You have to understand that something's manipulating energy I also interview people off podcasts. These are scientists that they just don't want that kind of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked one guy about ghosts, and he's like, "Well, I personally don't believe in ghosts or an afterlife. I think when the computer's off, it's off." Because, but if I had to make an analogy or a guess, he would think that ghosts manipulate not just energy, but the magnetic field around a person or in their general area.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's why your hair stands on end. That's why you get, that's why you get goosebumps, right?
Right.
Is that it's, because of the environment that you're in, something got manipulated in order to cause that. Now, most people get goosebumps when you go outside and you're cold, right? Or if you're wet and you get out of the shower or get out of the tub and you walk and you go out and you get a cold breeze that hits you, your body's going to react.
Right.
Is that, and same thing happens during investigations. Your body reacts and you have no control over that. It's an environmental thing that causes that to happen.
Yeah. Especially when you're speaking in terms of something that's manipulating energy, right? You don't know how to react.
Sure.
We don't know the actual effects. We just know there's an effect.
Right. Well, and we do know from a very outside perspective, high EMF can cause hallucinations, can cause nausea, can cause dizziness.
Sure.
And one of the things that we always do is that we'll do a walkthrough. And sometimes they've alluded to this on other shows at first, and then they kind of dropped it because people, I'm sure, thought it was boring as hell. But you do a walkthrough of the environment to see if you have any EMF leakage, because these Mel meters, you can go to breaker boxes in your home. If you owned a Mel meter or you owned an EMF meter, even a K2, which is the little gray device that has just the lights, you can walk over to a breaker box in anyone's home and you can see that the meter will jump because there's always leakage around a breaker box.
Right.
And so,
it's electricity with it's setting its own magnetic wave off.
Exactly. So you can always test the device to make sure that, that the device that you have works. But one of the things is that when you walk the environment, a lot of these homes don't have power anymore. Or if they do, it's basically one room that has power. So you can charge your equipment, and that's kind of what they do. But the rest of the house usually doesn't have power at all. There's no power. It's been cut. Fuses have been taken out.
Smart.
And
you're mitigating all the issues.
That's it. So when you walk the house and you start getting spikes on the Mel, or on a K2, right? We don't use a K2 very often, but on the Mel meter, once you'll see it jump, and sometimes you're in a stationary position, and you'll see the meter go from 0.0, which is usually what you should be getting if there's no power in the building, to 14.9. You'll see it jump, right, Lines?
If not 100 or...
And then it'll go right back down.
9.9, that's happened before,
happened before, yeah, in the church.
Yes.
That happened. And how do you explain that? There's no real way to explain that. And you'll see, and a lot of the times it's fleeting. And so what we've come to expect is that when we see that, generally we may see a figure on the Connect, which is, for everybody's listening, it's a 360 Connect. It's a 3D mapping software that Xbox invented. They no longer sell it. And essentially it maps what it believes to be or perceives to be energy by manipulation of the laser dots that it puts out in the environment. If those dots are interfered with at all, it determines that it's a person, or tries to determine that it's an object that actually has substance. We do know that there's false positives with lamps and mirrors because it reflects back.
I remember that Connect thing. It would sit on top of the TV, and you would essentially control the game without a remote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like a little ball. The little thing had a ball because it would detect that light form too. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. And they, and so they came to determine, right, is that this thing has the ability sometimes to detect interference from something that's not there. And we've proven that time and time and time again. And again, we know broomsticks, sometimes it thinks it's a person because, right, it interferes with the laser dots. And, but there are some places that we're in that there's nothing that it would map as a person, and a person comes, right? And a person is mapped next to me. I mean, I even go to the point of, because Lainey loves the Connect, right?
Oh, I do.
So Lainey will sit there and she'll go, okay, it's to your left. It's to your left. I'll walk over to whatever she's mapping. And then the Connect starts to map me, and I put my hand out. I try to shake its hand. I try to interact with what she's seeing on camera. And we have a lot of those. Sometimes you feel a cold spot, sometimes you don't. Right. But there's no reason why it would be mapping something that's sitting in a chair that's not there.
And on command.
Yeah.
US. And it would say, well, okay, can you give him a hug? And the figure goes ahead and gives Don a hug. There's no way to explain that.
No, there really isn't. I would love to be there.
And like I said, we've done a lot of these investigations over the course of all these years. And, we've been, I think pretty successful. But, to our own nobility, we absolutely want to stress that everything that we put out there is actual captures. It's nothing we've manipulated. I do know how to edit video. All I do is just basically chop off the beginning, the boring parts, chop off the end, get right to the evidence, and that's what we post. I manipulate nothing.
That's the way it should be, though, right? Put the good stuff in there.
That's it.
Right.
Well, who wants to watch us for 2 hours?
Right.
Well, I'd watch Lainey for like 6 hours, but that'd be her own show.
Well, just like the pictures. That's why I don't put any filters. I don't put anything. The only thing I put on our pictures is it says like Spectrewaves Paranormal.
Right.
And then that's it.
Yeah, you got to TM it,
Right.
Well, and that's it, right? Is that and just to let everyone know, and Adam, I don't know if you know this or not, but when you take pictures, when we're in the environment, and Lainey is a big proponent of taking pictures in the environment. When you take pictures, you take 3 successive pictures that you don't move. So meaning that you hold the camera in this particular position and you take 1, 2, 3. When you go back to review that, you may find that in 2 of the pictures, nothing appears, but in the 3rd picture, something may appear. And that's usually corroborating evidence that you caught something. Especially, we don't just randomly take pictures. We take pictures in environments where we know some of the equipment is being utilized, or we're getting information from things like an Novelist, which is a phonetic dictionary. And we start taking pictures in those environments, right? And we ultimately, sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's absolutely nothing. We don't capture anything. But sometimes there definitely is. So for all junior amateur ghost hunting people, especially like even if you're in your home and you think something is happening in your home, right? Grab your phone, take 3 pictures right in a row. Do not move the phone. Try to hold it as steady as you can and take the same picture 3 times and see what happens.
Yeah. I'll try anything. I'm desperate to see something. You know what I mean? What's going to happen is one day I'm going to die, and afterlife, go there like, why did none of you talk to me? And they're going to be like, you're an asshole. Wanted nothing to do with you. Again, going back to Lainey, watching her, like anywhere I go, I check my 360. I look around. She just walks right in there. Because, let's be honest. Out of all the ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, whatever other anomaly you could think of, the most dangerous thing on this planet is still humans.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah. No, you put me and Lainey in the woods with a whole bunch of crazed humans.
Yeah, that's
we wouldn't
terrifying.
be there. We certainly wouldn't investigate it. And that was the best thing about COVID. There is nothing really best about COVID, but the best thing that came out of it, right, was that they still allowed us to go on a couple of locations to investigate. And obviously, you're not going to be infringed upon by ghosts having COVID. So, what a perfect opportunity, right? God,
imagine if ghosts could catch COVID.
That would be horrible.
It'd be terrible. There'd be nothing. They're like, great, we ruined it for everyone.
That's right.
Off air, I'll give you a lead.
Okay.
I had another interview off air. Sorry, guys that are listening, I had to do this to you. He works for a government building in Virginia. Okay. And he was telling me that the facial recognition thing for about a week straight at nighttime kept picking up something. No one in the building. So they replaced it, he told me, with another machine, and then it did it again. And then it stopped happening for reasons unbeknownst to them. But it was it was a very interesting story. And obviously I'm not going to, I like the off-air interviews. These are people just give me information because I do make it apparent. I'm going to go out and do a documentary. That's going to be a stop, right? It's a lot of information to take in. And I have this thing about information. I don't think any information is bad information. You just have to learn how to filter correctly.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
And absolutely. So, I find a lot of these very credible people speaking about some of the incredible things they've seen and have encountered. And at the end of that, the summary of that is I'm not special. So I don't know why. I have to. I know I'm going to go out and do a documentary. I'm going to go to these spots. I'm taking lists. I'm going to build this network. You guys involved, and I'm going to go. I got to go. It's crazy. I cannot go the rest of my life without seeing something.
So here's a couple of things really fast that I know Lainey and I wanted to share. Sure. Well, the first thing is the last investigation that we just did was Forest Home Cemetery in Forest Park, Illinois. And through the course of time, there's this group, and I'll shout out to them, is that Afterlife Tours out of Aurora, Illinois. And they had made deals with these independent cemetery owners that they would have some tours set up at night that, and get permission to go in these cemeteries at night and to do these tours, right? So we've known these guys for, I don't know, like 6 years. And we've done multiple different graveyards that they had access to that they could get into. And so one of the things is that, most of these cemeteries, right, pardon the pun, are dead. They're right. Not
they're
the safest place to be. Right. The safest place to be is in a cemetery, right? Usually nothing is there. There's not a lot of activity that we've picked up through the course of years. You may get a random EVP, or you may get a random shadow figure or, but generally it's not that active, I think is the best way to put it. Now, that stopped 2 weeks ago when we went to Forest Home. It's the most active cemetery we've ever been in. Right, Lance?
It was, yeah. Well, the fact is we got a couple of names.
Mm-hmm. Full names,
first and last name.
Huh. Is that and really some Class A EVPs coming out of the spirit box. So if anybody's interested, we've posted the investigation online with just the highlights of what we caught. By
the way, I'll in the comments or in the description, send me whoever you want. I'll post it.
Okay. All right. Cool. Is that but this cemetery was very active, very vocal. And one of the reasons why I think that this cemetery was more active than any of the other cemeteries that we'd ever gone to is this cemetery was from the mid 1800s in Chicago. A lot of some famous people actually are buried there. But that's really not the reason. The reason is because it was always a non-denominational cemetery. So it was never consecrated ground. It was never consecrated. Huh. So some of these other cemeteries that have since become independent at some point were belonged to whether it be the Catholic Church or the Lutheran Church or Jewish synagogue organizations. Is that, and then it was ultimately passed down or bought out by an independent group. And but this particular cemetery was never ever anything but what it was. And so I think that makes a difference. I think that it's just in my mind. I mean, it's just it's a guess on my part, but that's the only thing I can explain to me that makes sense to me why it was so active when we did investigate a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Anybody was welcome.
Yeah.
And we're going back actually next Saturday. So we'll have more evidence. It'll be part 2. We had so much evidence and so much interaction, and you only have a finite amount of time in there. Right. Is that we couldn't get to the back part of the cemetery. So we're going to the back part of the cemetery, and hopefully we catch some more things back there.
That brings up something for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's think how many humans are on this planet since the dawn of man.
Right.
Where do we bury all these people? Like,
well,
you ever think of that? I don't think there's enough real estate for the bodies.
Well, and that's interesting, right? Because a lot of these cemeteries, Catholic cemeteries, Lutheran cemeteries, they all have different rules, basically. But for the most part, right, you only rent that plot. You don't get to keep the plot.
You lease it.
Oh, my goodness.
So after 100 years, they bury somebody over you.
That is, well, I mean, yeah, generations pass, so who's going to complain, right? That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
I just never thought of that.
Right. Right.
There's a case. There's this group on Facebook I follow. What's their name? The Tampa Bay Paranormal Society. And every so often, I get in there just to see what they clip and kind of learn things. And some time ago, someone posted a video. I watched it. And it was the one video that actually freaked me out. And it's this guy. It's daylight too, broad daylight, and he's in his house and he's panicked about something. He's recording, and there's this thing. It's like upside down in the doorway, and you could definitely sense his adrenaline dump. You could sense he was scared, and the fear in his face when he's like trying to examine what he saw. That spoke for me. That was a pretty compelling video, and it troubled me looking at that. I tried to blow up that image to, look for, if there was anything there that shouldn't be there, etc. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see anything, and that is the one thing that bothered me. That video still bothers me because that was some creepy shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's out there that's unexplainable, and again, because we've been doing this so long, and because I understand video editing, I mean that's part of my real life job, is that I have to say is that there's some of the things that you couldn't have faked if you tried. There are other things though that I'm suspect of.
Right.
Is that just knowing what I know, that I would be like, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's right or not. But that being said, is that a couple of things that I'll leave you with too about this is that we were at McPike Mansion again. McPike Mansion, we had a lot of weird stuff go on during that investigation. And so here's the setup for you, is that first off, I will say this as a disclaimer, we don't have any interaction with Ghost Adventures whatsoever. It just so happens that some of the properties that we've investigated, they have investigated as well. And that was the case with McPike Mansion.
Huh.
Sharon, who owns McPike, actually had told us that Ghost Adventures was there 3 weeks prior to us being there. So again, we have no interaction with that. And why it's relevant for this story is as we were doing Spirit Box session on the stairs in the foyer by the front door, where there was, they had just reinstalled the old doors, which are leaded glass, opaque leaded glass. And so we were in there. We had a static camera running. And for anybody who wants to know, a static camera is just a camera that is unmanned. It's just recording. That's all it's doing. And so we were doing the Spirit Box session in there. And Lainey ends up.
Oh, well, that's when I saw a white streak and a red streak. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, God, Don, I think there's somebody coming up the porch. Well, we had a bunch of equipment out there, so we were concerned about the equipment, and we wanted to see what was going on. And Don turns to me, he's on the porch, and he says, do you hear that? And I'm like, yeah, I hear it. He's like, it's horses walking on cobblestone. And it was the creepiest, coolest thing ever. With your own ears, you can hear horses walking on cobblestone.
And the interesting thing is,
gave me chills listening to.
When she had said it, we immediately went out the door. Okay. And there's a long porch, just like there is in a lot of old houses, that runs the gambit of the whole front of the house. And so we had equipment out there. And so we left the door open. The static camera was still recording the hallway. And there wasn't a lot of room between the hallway and where the stairs were and where the front door is. So the camera was still running when we went out there to go check. And we both hear it with our own ears. And fortunately, the camera captured it. Now, the reason why I brought up Ghost Adventures was because we were anxious to see what they captured when they were there and if it was any kind of similar captures. As far as like interactions on spirit boxes, that kind of thing. And ironically, at about the 26-minute mark in that episode, Zach Bagans is standing in the front of the lawn, on the lawn in front of McPike Mansion. We kind of know where he's standing. And he says it. He goes, you guys hear that? It's horses. It's horses on cobblestone. It says almost identically the same thing that I said. Now, fast forward to after we posted this evidence, Alton News got a hold of us. They did an article on it. And ironically, one of the neighbors wrote us and said, listen, and basically McPike Mansion is in a neighborhood. It's not, there's no farms out there, even though it's in a rural community, it's in a neighborhood, right, just like an old rural neighborhood. And so there's no horses, there's no horse barns.
Well, when you say that, when you're describing the horse sound, I don't know why, but for whatever reason in my mind, I picture like an old school military guy coming home.
you know what? And that could very well be it. And obviously, McPike was built around the time where they actually even had a carriage house there. And so one of the neighbors, when they wrote us, they said, listen, we just wanted to tell you that I've lived here for 35 years and we hear that every night in the summer, every night. And nobody's ever we've never seen anybody write about it. We've never heard anybody capturing it. And so I'm so glad that you gave it validity, that you actually captured these sounds. And I didn't have to enhance it really in the video. You can hear it. Now on Ghost Adventures, they didn't hear it. You don't hear it. I've listened to that clip 100 times and you don't hear it.
But he definitely heard it.
He definitely heard it. And so I actually did a mock-up video of him saying it and me saying it, right? And it's ironic because we didn't have any kind of interaction whatsoever. Is that so? So to capture something like that with two different groups made it really fascinating and gave it a lot more validity, I thought.
Are you guys allowed to stay the night there?
It depends on the owners. Now, on McPike, Sharon, who's the lady who owns it, basically gave us till about like 2:00.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and basically said, you guys are out by 2.
I'm going to mess. Listen, I'll rent it for a week. Let me bring some gear. Not even a lot. And let me sit in there. And if I don't come back, you know what happened.
Yeah, right. I have to say is that for, evidence, there's another place that we've investigated a few times. And every time that we investigate, something different and unusual happens. And so the last time that we investigated, this was Crown Point Jail in Crown Point, Indiana. It's the old sheriff's house. And just as a little bit of history for everybody is that in Indiana, the county sheriff, the elected county sheriff, had to live in the front part of the jail, not in the jail. So the front part of these old jails had a home, and he was expected to live there. And then the jail was subsequently behind the home. And so that's how a lot of these old jails are in rural communities in Indiana that are still left standing. So, and this jail had its big claim to fame was Dillinger was there, and he escaped from there. So we went there.
Talk about a bunch of people that did not want to die where they were, right?
Right.
I mean, imagine. I said earlier, I would have a hard time leaving here because for nostalgic reasons. I don't want to leave. I like, what my life was, etc. Those people, all they thought about was getting out of that place and they die there. No way. I completely would buy the idea they just stuck around.
Right. And so we've never had, and I will say this at Crown Point, they show you where the jail cell is that Sandy Snow is the lady who runs it for the Historical Society. And, so she gives us full access to everything that we want access to. And we're not restricted in any way. So on the 3rd floor, there's a juvenile hall that still has bunk beds in there. And so we've done investigations there. The first time we went up there and the second time we went there, we were wrapping up our investigation. We ended with it's the highest point of the jail. And we were taking pictures. I was taking pictures of Laney, and I kept seeing white streaks come past the camera, like on a consistent basis. That obviously was not there. It wasn't dust. It wasn't anything. There were these white streaks that just kept appearing on the camera, and you could see it in real time. And so I kept saying to Laney, we hit this. So we turned the spirit box on, and the spirit box is going, and we're not really catching anything. And all of a sudden we hear, now there's, just like all jails, there's metal stairs, and we hear somebody running up the stairs, a growl. The spirit box goes off and says, "What?" And then a giant bang on the back wall. All happened sequentially within about 40 seconds.
Huh.
And I tell you what, is that the reaction that you hear Laney off camera say was not a contrived reaction.
Huh.
Is that it was a true reaction, right, Lane?
Yeah, that was so cool. We wanted more to happen right there. We paused for a second and we're like, oh, wow, cool. And you know what? Believe it or not, we start taking more photos. So I think most people probably would have ran out. We stood there and tried to see if we could capture more.
Lainey, you're unusually brave, by the way.
Thank you.
Because again, I was saying earlier, anywhere I go, I make sure I check the 360 and I'm in good shape for those dangerous humans, I might add. But you just walk in, period. You don't even care. So.
Right. Is that so, and so we've had, other smaller experiences and, in that jail again, that was the first time Lainey got her hair pulled. And I actually captured the back end of the pull, meaning that we were just wrapping up on the second floor in the rec area and we were going to move on to a different spot. And Lainey's like, something's pulling my hair. So I grab the camera, I pull around, I go around the back of her, and you can see her hair lifting up like static electricity. Well,
at the same time, the millimeters start going off. It's spiked up, and then the REM pod went ahead and it started lighting up. Meaning with the REM pod, someone physically has to touch this device in order for the lights to go off. And that was one of the coolest things.
And I'm glad I had a chance to, I hadn't shut the light off, the RR light at that time. I had just stopped recording. So when it started, I had to hit record real fast and run around Lainey to the back. And since that time now we have POV cameras. So we try to run, that's actually what made us get POV cameras, which for anybody, we basically, it's like a GoPro, but
like a body cam.
Yeah, a body cam. So
right.
So that if we miss something and I'm shutting down the main camera, we still have the other camera running in case we run into a situation like this. But that's what prompted us to actually make sure that we have those cameras on.
Smart. That makes what you're doing makes for a better show, in my opinion. Because there's nothing worse than sitting there for an hour and people are talking, they're in the dark, and the moments that you guys are what you're doing in your videos, you're making those moments people wait for more accessible.
Yeah, because we really want to put the evidence out there. That's really the reason why we're doing this. We're doing this to share what our experiences are and what we're really capturing. And that's really what makes a difference for us.
Look, that's appreciated. I like that. Before we close, I want to get your opinion on demons.
Okay.
Because from everything I've read about them, and I've talked to a couple other paranormal people on show, most of them off. There's it's almost, they can't say the devil, right? It's just some sort of negative energy completely. And so hopefully it's not one of the ones I run into, because that'll be a piss fest for a while, right?
Well, and I'm going to tell you what is that one of the things that we really, really try to follow is that we're not demonologists,
right?
We're and dark entities. Although you can't make sure that there's no dark entities in a particular location, but we try to avoid that like the plague. And the biggest reason is because from all experiences that has been shared with us by other paranormal people, is that there's that whole thing about attachment.
Yeah. And
realistically, it changes your personality. It's just like when you're in an environment, and Lainey can speak to this, right? Is that when you're in an environment, what happens sometimes with you?
Well, my personality will change, or it depends what happened on that location, whether it be someone building the house with a lot of bricks. My back will start hurting. It just feels like a ton of bricks is on my back. Or if there was a depressed person that was there that hurt themselves, killed themselves, all of a sudden the emotions, you can kind of feel that, being so close twice to the death plane.
Right. And so sometimes when you feel anger.
Yeah.
For no reason.
You can feel that.
Well,
yeah, for no reason.
Because if you think, if you're in a room full of negative people, you're going to feel negativity. You could feel that energy. There's no doubt about it. You could almost, like, if you're in a room and everyone's laughing, you're cheerful. If everyone's miserable and angry, you could feel that tension in the room. So and then you're talking about something we think is manipulating energy. Then you could amplify that same sensation in a room of people times 10.
And especially, with Lainey being more sensitive now, is that she experiences a lot more. I mean, sometimes we were in a private investigation one time and it really affected me. It doesn't happen very often to me, and you can't explain it. You can't explain why you feel drained and tapped and anxious, and not anxious because of the environment that you're in, but just anxious. Like everything just pisses you off.
Yeah.
And you get out of the environment, we go back out to the van, and everything's fine.
Well, we do sage.
Yes, we do.
At
the end of every investigation, we do. But getting back to your question about demonic possessions or demonic entities, is that we try to avoid those. And just because of the attachment situation, there's enough out there for us to investigate. I don't think that you really need to go full tilt and go find negative entities to engage with. Or an overwhelming sense of negativity? Because I will say I've seen it happen to Lainey. Lainey has seen it happen to me on investigations. And would that be classified as demonic? It could be.
Yeah, very well. It's a negative energy at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the times people purport the fact that shadow people, or that they never lived, right? That there's some form of energy that somehow has existed, in this universe, and and tries to maybe become human, maybe become engaged with our energy, right? And so almost like an abduction, but not an abduction from another physical entity, abduction from a spiritual entity.
Yeah, keep in mind, we're not the only species that existed here. Who knows? This is a very old planet, billions of years old. Who knows what societies have come and gone? What form of humanoid type creatures are here that have died here, and we don't know what their spirits very well could be around too.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we don't know, and that gets into the things about portals. Meaning and parallel universes, where the theory goes that, and the more we look into this, the more sometimes it makes a little bit more sense. Is that with a parallel universe, is that could there be rips in that parallel universe that causes what we believe to be spirits, which are really just energies from a different ethereal plane? I mean, it can get deep and fast, and it's really unprovable. It's just what you believe. That
really comes down to, again, we don't know what, the more I listen and watch Graham Hancock, the more I'm doubting what we know as history. You know what I mean? So according to him, there's been civilizations have come and gone. And again, back to whether it be a positive or negative energy that's around us, it doesn't mean it was human at one point. It could have been some other form of being that was here on this planet billions of years ago. If you think about it, if something died off let's say 5 million years ago, there really wouldn't be any trace of it right now. No, right. So we don't know what energy's left behind. I mean, it's a mystery at the end of the day. Right, exactly. And so we just like to contribute our small little part in not just doing this, but trying to find evidence that kind of corroborates what people have experienced for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. And I think, to us anyways, I think that if either I or Lainey pass away, we're pretty confident in the fact that it's just a physical body that's passing away, and that energy stays the way it is. It's kind of like the theory that any amount of radio shows that were broadcast or television shows that were broadcast that were put out into the airwaves, that if you took a rocket ship and could fly as fast as you possibly could, you can catch those live being broadcast because it never deteriorates. That energy, that waveform doesn't deteriorate. It just exists someplace else. Or it travels indefinitely. I mean, it takes 100,000 years for a radio wave to travel the galaxy, let alone the universe, right? And then who says it doesn't come back around? Right, exactly. I feel bad for people. Look, when I pass, sorry, everybody. I'm a jerk. I'm going to be haunting probably the Hooters or something. Who knows?
Well, we haven't explored a haunted Hooters yet, but you never know.
Yeah,
right?
well, when I go, they will. Trust me.
And we'll come and say, Adam, how's it going?
Well, Don, Lane, I really liked having you guys on a lot. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know I'm going to have you on again. That I know.
Awesome.
And I'm going to tune in some of your videos. So go ahead and announce again the name of your YouTube.
It's Spectrewaves, because we have a problem with repeating ourselves. No, it's because somebody else had Spectrewaves, so we had to do it fast and think quick, and so that was the quickest we could think of, to do Spectrewaves. So
I like it doubled. It sounds official.
Always better when you say it twice. Right?
All right, guys. Thank you for being on. I appreciate your time. You guys have a good night.
Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.